I'm Alex.
And I'm Brennan.
Today we're talking about cool EU connections, part one.
Indeed, we are, and there are a great multitude of connections in the EU. Since
So
it's,
many that we can't fit in one video. I mean, you could,
absolutely,
but it'd be a while.
it would be a very long video. It would be like as long as Chris Nelson's videos about, the history of the EU.
For as long as
Every
Sheep talks about Kenobi.
Absolutely, it would just be so very long, those videos, because there is a multitude of connections in the EU. Because the EU tried to be a interconnective series of media branching over 26,000 years of history. There's bound to be lots of references and connections here and there. So we're going to talk about some of our favorites today.
Mm-hmm.
One that I had written down, which I think is really cool, is about a certain species that first appeared in the crystal star. The species were called ghostlings. They were essentially angelic beings, but they were really fragile. Like if you touched their arm would break, and their skin was like really brittle. And so even though they were beautiful, they got destroyed really easy. They were like very fragile. And so these ghostlings were like really kind of out there, kind of Star Trekky almost, appearing in the crystal star. And these ghostlings were never referenced again until the episode 1 Adventures books, where Dave Wolverton wrote the middle arc, because there were 3 arcs in the episode 1 Adventures Young Readers novels. These, I'm not sure exactly how long later, after Crystal Star this was, but this is 1999 to 2001 ish for these episode 1 Adventures books. No, Crystal Star is late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in there, probably mid 90s now that I think about it. But the point is, it was a long time later, and Dave Wolverton said, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make ghostlings that were just a throwaway species from Crystal Star. I'm gonna make them an integral part of my episode 1 Adventures books, because the whole point of the middle arc is that Anakin has to save a bunch of ghostlings who are, threatened, and are being sold as slaves, and Anakin has to help them escape, which is just such a cool connection to make them such an integral part to this arc of a children's book series. No
Right.
children had read The Crystal Star at this time, but Dave Wolverton put it in there. Yeah, most
Didn't
likely.
need to. But because EU writers were awesome, they would do it. They didn't need to put all this stuff, but they would do it because they loved it.
And speaking of episode 1 Adventures, another really cool connection that was Ryder Wyndham's idea was Jorah Sabaoth, who the clone of Jorah Sabaoth is in the Thrawn trilogy, right? And Jorah Sabaoth, the Jedi who the clone was based on, had never appeared in the EU until in the very first episode 1 Adventures book, Ryder Wyndham put Jorah Sabaoth in it. So that's like
Ryder
really
Wyndham
cool.
had the OG one before Zahn did.
Yeah, because Zahn had, the clone. He wrote about the clone, and then Zahn later went back and wrote about the original Jedi. But Ryder Wyndham put it in there first, which is just so very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the program Outbound Flight is even referenced in episode 1 Adventures in that first book.
Probably right. You know where else Sabaoth is mentioned, though? He's also mentioned, makes a very slight, I believe, appearance in Cloak Inception, which is another novel set before episode 1, which is an adult novel. But he's mentioned, along with, while being a very minor role and not having a huge character to play, but she is around for a good portion of the book, is Vergier. But the cool connection was with Vergier being there, or Vergier, however we pronounce it, because she does not play a significant role in the book, but she's around. So that's very cool.
That is very cool. And Vergier, of course, being from New Jedi Order.
Yes.
And Vergier was also, not appearing in, but referenced in the novel Rogue Planet, which ties into the New Jedi Order. And
as she had already went to the planet and was missing, so Obi-Wan and Anakin go to look for her. Also, the planet that they visit is a massive connection to New Jedi Order as well.
Yeah, Zenoma Sekot.
Yes.
And another interesting connection that I like to take note of is the bounty hunter Dirge. Dirge is this really old bounty hunter. He's a Jedi, and he first appeared in the Clone Wars micro series, as well as appearing in the Republic comic books. And what's really cool is the Boba Fett Young Readers novels. One of the books, I think it was the one called Hunted, which I
Yeah,
think was the fourth one,
I think
has
so.
Dirge in it.
Yeah, briefly.
Like, that's a super cool connection.
It isn't mentioned elsewhere, like him not liking Mandalorians because of what they did to his people.
Indeed, and that's why he doesn't like clones from the Republic comics. Which, like, that's a really cool connection there. And that's also connection to the Visionaries short comic, right? Prototypes, because in that Mandalorians kill his like mentor. So the Boba Fett books were really making a lot of connections, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Also a bit of a minor one, but I recently was going and reading Crimson Empire. I have a omnibus collection, so it's got all the comics within it. One of the ones in there was a Dark Horse extra, Par Currency, and it made a connection to Cam Kennedy's Boba Fett comics. It was kind of a one-off mention, but they mention, I don't remember the first name, but it was another Kuda, and Boba Fett goes up against these like Kuda brothers in those comics. And this is some sort of cousin or something, I guess. But it was a cool little connection to those comics.
Absolutely, that's a great reference there, because those Boba Fett comics aren't talked about too much, I don't think.
No, they're not. Not outside of like the super deep EU circles, anyway.
Yeah. Sticking with comics, there's the character Asherad Het, who's sort of a pretty major important character. He appears in the Republic comic series, and even before it was titled Republic, back when it was just called Star Wars,
Right.
has appearances all throughout there. And what's really cool about Asherad Het is, he survives Order 66, and then years later in universe, in the Legacy comics, as you're going through and reading that, you're introduced to a Sith whose name is Darth Krayt, and he's this really big bad. He's the leader of the One Sith, this new movement who have rejected the rule of two and believe in only the rule of one. One Sith, every Sith as contributing members of one order. And the visionary behind this is Darth Krayt. And you're like, who is this Darth Krayt? Where does he come from? And then it's later revealed that he is in fact Asherad Het, which is just a really cool connection there. And
not to mention, if we're just talking about that from the get-go, part of the backstory for how they shape him into who he is in those comics is a huge connection to New Jedi Order itself.
Absolutely, because he got Vong formed, didn't he?
Embrace of pain.
Exactly, yeah. And he even appears physically in Fate of the Jedi Apocalypse. Not by name, but it describes that Luke teams up with a man shrouded in darkness with two different colored eyes. And that was Darth Krayt, aka Asherad Het.
Yes. Also, another little fun one. For those who remember the 80s Droids cartoon, this one's a bit more well-known, but there's a wheel, like this, I guess, car-like thing in one of the episodes, and that is the same wheel that Grievous uses in Episode 3 when he's fighting against Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, and Droids has some really cool information that George Lucas took and used in the prequels. Not an EU connection, but like Matt Wilkins talked about this in some videos, how Droids referenced pod racing, and George loved that so much that he took pod racing from there and, put it in the prequel movies. And I can't remember all of them, but there was some other stuff in Droids as well that George took from Droids and used it in the prequels, which is just really
it's not exactly the same thing, but there is this alien who owns a 50s looking diner who also happens to have 4 arms. It's not the same race, but it seems pretty clear that has to be some sort of reference in Episode 2 when Obi-Wan goes to a diner that happens to also look very 50s-esque.
Yeah, with Dexter Jetster there, who also has, 4 arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. And something else that's kind of cool that was a connection that really had me jumping up and down excited was in Mall Lockdown by Joe Schreiber, which
Right.
I don't hear a lot of people talking about it, the book,
Yeah.
but I really like Mall Lockdown. I think it's fantastic. And
Hmm.
in Mall Lockdown, a fight that fans of the EU, like when they're talking about, oh, who would beat who, I'm sure it had come up before this in Mall Lockdown. The Yuzon Vong, super cool, super powerful. The Yuzon Vong warriors from New Jedi Order. And, I'm sure someone at some point had said, who would win, Darth Maul or a Yuzon Vong? Joe Schreiber certainly thought this because he put a little connection in there by bringing in a Yuzon Vong warrior, though not called a Yuzon Vong. It is
No.
described to clearly be a Yuzon Vong.
Hmm.
Uh,
Anybody that knows that series would get the reference. You might
Absolutely.
It might skip past you if you know nothing about that era. You might not realize even what you're seeing. But if you know the source material, then you absolutely know what the reference is.
Absolutely. And the description for this warrior that Maul fights, it's so vivid. And I had just
Hmm.
read New Jedi Order before I read Maul Lockdown, so I was so excited because
Hmm.
Darth Maul gets to fight a Yuzon Vong. How cool is that? That's such a cool connection there. I really
Yeah.
like that one.
Hmm. There's also, um, now that I think about it, I believe in Mole Lockdown there is an appearance by Plagueis as well, which isn't really an EU connection necessarily, but still very cool because Plagueis does not appear too much in the expanded universe, minus obviously the novel named him. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool connection as well.
And now that you said that, I just remembered another Maul Lockdown connection that I hadn't
Oh,
even written
right.
down.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Kamari Vasa from the
Yes.
Bounty
Yes.
Hunter video game.
Yeah, I just thought about that too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. We're thinking up connections that we hadn't even discussed.
We didn't even
Um,
write down.
yeah, yeah.
Kamari
Kamari
Vosa
Vasa.
was a previous. Sorry, you do.
No, you explain it.
Vosa was a previous Padawan to Dooku, who later on became, I guess, a Dark Jedi. And yeah, she makes an appearance here. And she also gets defeated by Jango Fett in the Bounty Hunters video game.
Yeah, I love those connections. I feel like if Joe Schreiber had kept writing, his books would have had more and more connections.
Hmm.
Because like Death Troopers, his first novel didn't really have much, but it's clear that he loved the EU because by Maul
Hmm.
Lockdown he was really throwing in lots of references.
Hmm. Yeah, it was great. It's a great novel. And if you're one who likes action more than other things, it's definitely a book for you. As about 70% of it is action.
Yeah, it's quite a adrenaline inducing read.
But you know what? You know what else is also interesting, which you can maybe talk about with the other book that you had mentioned. But Karen Travis, controversial figure in the expanded universe, probably the second most controversial apart from Troy Denning. But she made a Republic Commando series that was widely popular by a lot of people. And in it, she has wonderful connections to the expanded universe, which is clear that she does love the expanded universe. She just is very strong in some of her opinions about the world, but she does bring back several times Callista from the unofficial Callista trilogy, but Children of the Jedi, Dark Saber, and Twilight, Planet Twilight, and Scout from Dark Rendezvous by Sean Stewart. And it seemed like what Karen Travis was kind of setting up was that she was going to actually, within her own novels, kind of tell the story of how Callista got shoved into a computer to kind of explain that weirdness in the Bantam era. But then all the drama happened, and we will never see that story now. But it's definitely cool to see those characters make an appearance in something else other than their original source.
Yeah, absolutely. That connection there to Children of the Jedi is brilliant. And Karen Travis also made another connection to Callista. She really liked Callista. She put
She
Callista in,
did.
Republic Commando, and then she also wrote a book that was surprisingly well received because it's a TCW tie-in. But I've heard
Right.
lots of positive things about it, and I enjoy it as well. It's the novel No Prisoners, and in No Prisoners, Karen Travis puts a young Callista as a Jedi, as a very young Jedi fighting in the war. So that's another connection there to not only Children of the Jedi, but also Republic Commando, since she
Hmm.
put Callista in Republic Commando as well. And also, somewhat interesting in No Prisoners is Jalad Paleon shows up, of
Hmm.
course, being from originally the Thrawn trilogy. He pops
Hmm.
up in a lot of places in the EU, but it was really cool to see him really young, fighting in the
Yeah,
Clone Wars.
but still being so awesome as always. Like when he told Ahsoka to wear some dang clothes.
Yes, he told her that she needed to
If you're
comply
gonna be on
to
my ship, you're wearing clothes. Sorry.
exactly.
Love Pelion.
He's awesome. Another cool connection with references to the Thrawn trilogy is in Galaxy of Fear. In
Hmm.
Galaxy of Fear, you have a young Thrawn appear,
Oh
Captain
yeah.
Thrawn.
Hmm.
So that was really cool that John Whitman put that in there. And John Whitman was a
Absolutely.
master of continuity because he also
Yeah.
put Jarek in Galaxy of Fear, who is from the Dark Forces video games,
Hmm.
and he put the hologram Fun World, which was first from the infamous Jedi Prince series.
He also put the wife of the Ithorian from the Mos Eisley Cantina in there.
Yes, from the Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina stuff.
Hmm. He had so many connections to so many things. It was clear when you read that young adult series how much of a fan John Whitman is of the expanded universe. You could see it throughout the entire book.
Absolutely. It's really a shame he never got to write like a full length novel because I think that would have been crazy good.
It probably would have been. Another cool little minor thing, even though me and Brendan are different on our feelings on the novel itself, but it's still interesting because I never thought I'd see it anywhere else. Is the fact that in The Last Jedi, not the other one that you're thinking of, the novel by Michael Reeves, it includes there's a certain section where Jax Pavin is using the Force ability, flow walking, which literally basically only appears in Legacy of the Force. So that is a crazy connection to that series.
Absolutely, that's a insane connection right there. Very, very, very cool.
It's also a novel where he tried to fix. I don't think he did a super great job, but he tried to fix some of the errors that were happening with TCW, or at least address them as stuff from TCW does get addressed, like the different Mandalorians on Mandalore as opposed to the ones that you see in the Republic Commando novels and stuff. And it's kind of haphazardly done, but it was one of the later books, as it was 2013 when it came out. So there are connections to TCW and other things in the expanded universe as well.
Yeah, that's some very cool connections in there. Michael Reeves is a very excellent author. And this made me think of something that I'd not thought of at all, which is Shadow Games, which is a
Oh,
novel that has as the protagonist Dash Rendar, who is
right.
a character from the Shadows of the Empire video game. So
Absolutely.
it's another great
Well,
connection there.
and in that same novel, the if I'm remembering correctly, I could be incorrect, but the I forget the race's name, but Kit Fisto, the race of
Yeah,
that, uh,
Nautilin.
yeah, Noslin, his like partner or whatever is that, and his partner was also like I don't know if he was related, but he had some affiliation with Kit Fisto in the
Yeah,
prequel.
he was like a cousin or something.
Yeah, it was something like that, or like a teacher or something, or I don't know. It was something like that though, but it was still a connection to the prequels. It was
Yeah,
very cool.
that's really cool as well. Yeah. Going back to the comics for a minute, there's a character who's quite obscure and he's kind of disliked in both places he appeared. But that is a character named Dre. And Dre, I'm not sure where he first appeared, but he appears in two comics in two very separate eras. He appears in the Invasion comics as a Dark Jedi who tempts the protagonist, the amazing Finn Galfridian, who is absolutely beloved by fans. He tempts the amazing Finn Galfridian over to the dark side. He's a Dark Jedi there, this Dre. And Dre also appeared in the comic that's a tie-in to TCW, which is Darth Maul Death Sentence, and appears there as a Padawan who gets his hands cut off by Darth Maul.
I'm gonna be honest. You taught me something new. I didn't know that. I do remember some kid getting his hands chopped off, but I don't remember that. So that's crazy.
He later goes on to be a Dark Jedi who is tempting Finn Galfridian all the way through Invasion, which I don't know how he survived that long.
Why. That's one of the things I missed. I never read Invasion, so that's why I don't know that.
You weren't missing much.
I know, but I'll read it when I get to it.
And now you'll know that a character from Darth Maul Death Sentence appears in it.
We'll make it slightly better. Only slightly.
Only slightly, yeah. They're painful.
Can't be as painful as Bounty Hunter Wars. Boom. But I think I only got one more. This doesn't have to. I only got about one more left. So if you have a couple more connections, you go ahead and talk about it, and I might add in something if I feel the need. But I just want to end the video with the Jedi Academy trilogy because it's based. So I'll do that one last.
Absolutely. I've got a couple more stuff that I jotted down, like the Omen ship, which is from Lost Tribe of the Sith. It appears in the beginning of the novel Cross Current, which is super cool because the novel Cross Current is connected to Tales of the Jedi, Lost Tribe of the Sith, Legacy of the Force, Fate of the Jedi. It's connected to all these things all at once.
Right, because it's a time travel story.
Absolutely, and Cross Current does a great job, connecting to Lost Tribe of the Sith with that Omen ship there. And, it even mentions Naga Sadow and stuff like that, so it's really cool. Then there's also, Lumia, however you say your name. First appeared in the Marvel Star Wars 1970 series. And she goes on to appear in Legacy of the Force, which is very, very cool that they brought her back.
Also...
go ahead.
I was going to say, it would be indirectly a reference, but since Lumaya is the first person to ever wield a light whip, Githany in the Darth Bane trilogy also uses a light whip, so that is completely influenced by Lumaya because the concept comes from her. I just understand. Along with, I'm not exactly sure where this information is found. I found it in Noah's chronology, so I assume it's accurate because he's usually pretty thorough. But I had no idea that Lumaya had tried to, and she had basically taken as an apprentice Connor Jack, Crimson Empire comics, to try to help him with his goal of becoming the Emperor of the Empire, of what was left of it.
I did hear that. I'm not sure where that information is from, but that's a cool connection there as well. With that Crimson Empire connection there, absolutely. And while we were talking about the Marvel Star Wars comics there, I thought of something else. The Nagai species who appeared in the latter half of the series. These invaders from another system, from the unknown regions, I should say. Darth Nil from Legacy is a Nagai, which is a connection to those original Marvel comics.
Super cool connection. I mean, and not to mention all the places in the EU, whether that be the what is it called, the Coruscant Knights books, whether it be Kenobi, whether it be Legacy itself, any place you find a Zeltron, you have to thank the Marvel comics because Zeltrons come from the Marvel comics. So anytime you see a Zeltron in one of the EU novels or in a comic somewhere, it's thanks to those Marvel comics.
Yes, that's very true. I didn't think about that, but yeah, those Zeltrons are quite a prominent race in the Star Wars universe, and they do come from those comics. Absolutely, and Zeltrons are pretty prominently used in Legacy.
Mm-hmm. By Lila Blue, the best girl.
All
Everybody's
right.
simple with talent, and I don't get it, man. Anyway, we can move on. That could be cut out. Actually, no, it's funny. Keeping it.
All right. Well, I'm not sure how to segue from that very smoothly, so I will just
We're talking
continue as
about
if
comics. So, are you done with your connections, or?
I'm done with my connection on comics, but I have one more thing here with the Crystal Star that I should have mentioned earlier.
All right, go
The
for it.
Kadru G are these six-legged werewolves who turn into people with four arms, and the
Okay.
Kadru G were only in the Crystal Star, and then they were really nowhere else. And then the Kadru G appear quite prominently in Legacy, in the Legacy comics, because Darth Krayt goes to the Kadru G homeworld, and he even kills the child of one of the diplomats. And since it's a
Oh, really?
child, it's one of the six-legged wolves. Yeah, he has one of the six-legged wolves killed, and it's actually the child of one of the negotiators for the Kadru G. So
Oh my
that's
goodness.
another
That's really
connection
cool.
in there.
I had no idea.
Absolutely.
Teach me new things.
And Kakruk. Kakruk is an important character from the Republic comics, who also appears in the Clone Wars 2003 show. Then he appears in the Dark Times comics, and then he even shows up in Legacy.
Krook is great. We need more Krook. If the EU ever gets continued, we need more Krook in our lives.
Absolutely, he's such a cool character visually, and the exploration of his character is great too. He's very layered, especially in Dark Times. The last thing I had written down is a character named Exion Amersu, or Zeon Amersu. I'm not sure how you'd say it. He first appeared in the Hunt for Aura Singh arc as a child who got their master murdered by Aura Singh. And then they went on to appear in the Dark Horse Extra short called Heart of Fire, where she talks with Quinlan Voss. And it's very interesting because she talks about how like Isla Sakura is like a big role model for her, as like Twi'lek females becoming Jedi was kind of a rare thing, as Twi'lek females are very disrespected on their homeworld of Ryloth. So it's quite a interesting story there in Heart of Fire, which is a Dark Horse Extra short comic. And then from there, she goes on to appear later in the Republic comics and dies during the Siege of Seleucami arc. And she even has a relationship with Asherad Het, who we've already talked about for appearing multiple places.
Yeah, because Asherad Het is super cool. But now that we've gone through all of that, I thought we could end it in a way that would make our favorite guy, Marcel Ryan, very happy, which is to end it with the GOAT, Kevin Janssen's Jedi Academy trilogy, which has so many connections. Unlike Zahn back in the day, no hate to Zahn, but he was a little full of himself back in the day. He's a little bit cooler now. But back in the day, he was very like, in my books, that's all there is. But Kevin J. Anderson, he didn't do that. He's a team player. He went, let's include everything. Let's make everything count. So he brought in Dark Empire. He references it within the first couple chapters of Jedi Search. We have huge connections to Tales of the Jedi comics, with Exar Kun being a huge aspect of those books. And there's a lot of other cool connections as well in those books, like having Anakin be referenced and everything, because that also comes in Dark Empire. And it's just a phenomenal trilogy filled with so many cool connections to the Expanded Universe, because Kevin J. Anderson just loved the Expanded Universe and loved sharing things and making them canon, unlike Zahn.
If Kevin J. Anderson hadn't referenced Anakin Solo in Jedi Academy trilogy, I wonder if Zahn would have even included him in Hand of Thrawn, or if he would have ignored it completely.
Imagine that. Imagine a world where New Jedi Order happens and Anakin Solo never existed.
Yeah, thank Kevin J. Anderson for making sure it all got referenced. Otherwise, Dark Empire would have been forgotten.
Well, and thank all the other EU writers for playing ball with that too. They all kind of had to because of Kevin J. Anderson. But I mean, you got the Corellian trilogy where they all play a huge role in that one.
Yeah.
So and not to mention Crystal Star, where the kids get kidnapped and everything. So.
Yeah. And I think they got kidnapped in Black Fleet Crisis too, didn't they?
Actually, no. I think that time it was Han who got kidnapped.
Oh, was it? Okay. There's a lot of kidnapping going on in that era.
Kidnapping happens to everyone in Star Wars at some point.
Yes. If it hasn't happened to you, you aren't in Star Wars.
No.
Kevin J. Anderson's
Obi-Wan
amazing.
even got kidnapped in the Republic comics by Ventress.
Yeah, he did. He got kidnapped by the Separatists over J-Bim.
Yep.
Kevin J. Anderson's amazing, and I wanted to leave it there with your awesome Tales of the Jedi reference, but it got me thinking about Young Jedi Knights. How Young Jedi Knights has a connection to the original Brian Daley Han Solo.
Right. This was one of the coolest connections. Continue.
Yeah, by having Anja Galandro, the daughter of Han's rival Galandro, showing up in Young Jedi Knights.
That was really great. That was one of the last arcs of Young Jedi Knights. I think it was the last arc, actually.
Yes, it was. It was the Crisis at Crystal Reef, and it was the one with Black Sun, I think.
Right. Oh, well, Black Sun is a connection of itself, but I was going to mention, I know in the Crystal Reef books, I think it's those ones, they go to there. Because it's either they go to Hapes for a time, or they go somewhere else. I forget. Actually, I don't know if it's Crystal Reef, but there are these Bartok assassins who attack them, and they also appear in the Episode 1 Adventures.
They do. The Bartok assassins are great.
Yeah.
And Darth Maul just kills so many of them in the one called The Fury of Darth Maul.
Yeah. Because you can slaughter, but you can slaughter animals and stuff. You just can't slaughter people.
Yeah,
that's how you get away from Star Wars.
That's a good lesson for children.
That's something to always remember.
Yeah.
Well,
keep that in your hearts.
Yes. Well, just like the EU with all of its connections, we as an EU fandom grow connections with each other, talking about all this stuff. And so, as we continue to make videos for this wonderful website, I hope people can continue to grow and connect in the expanding universe love together.
That's the most incredible outro I've ever heard.
There you go.